Hey, KB, and welcome to our story of the day. I've got a really good one for you that I think you enjoy listening to quite a bit. Today, we are going to listen to a folk tale. And the title of this folk tale is Aunt Nancy, a Gullah tale from South Carolina. So, this folk tale comes to us from one of the states in our country. South Carolina is one of the 50 states in the United States. And this story was created in that state. Now, like I said, this is a folk tale, and we have read many folk tales together this year. And in this folk tale, we are going to learn a lesson. So when we listen to this folk tale, I want you to think about the lesson that we are supposed to learn after listening to it. And we'll talk about that in the video as well. So let's get right to it. This folk tale is going to be about a spider and a sea turtle. Let's find out what lesson we are supposed to learn. Here's our illustration for part one of the story. So check it out for a second. Think about what we might be listening to and sit back and relax. Where do Aunt Nancy and Sea Turtle live? It was an average morning in the low South Carolina salt marsh. No wind was blowing, the sun was just warming up, and the birds were chirping and searching for food in the branches of the cypress trees. Aunt Nancy, the spider, lived in this salt marsh habitat under the green moss that hung heavy from a cypress tree's twisty branches. She caught beetles and moths and flies and butterflies in her web. She was cooking up yesterday's catch, fried bugs with beetle sauce. Aunt Nancy was humming and cooking when her friend Sea Turtle walked by. He stopped at the welcoming smell of food. "May I share your breakfast, Aunt Nancy?" he asked. "Certainly, Sea Turtle," Aunt Nancy answered after a long pause. "But if you please, wash your hands first." So, in our first part of the story, we met our two characters, Aunt Nancy the spider and the sea turtle. Aunt Nancy just cooked a delicious breakfast, and Sea Turtle is wondering if Aunt Nancy would share that breakfast with him. But Aunt Nancy asks him to wash his hands first. Let's check out part two. Here's the illustration, and let's listen. Sea Turtle frowned, but he agreed to go wash his hands. "This is a marsh," he thought as he walked away. "I don't want to complain, but I don't want to wash my hands in water where alligators swim. I guess I'll walk back down to the sea." As Sea Turtle walked to the shore and back again, he watched out for wild creatures that bite and sting, like the cottonmouth snake and fire ants. It was a dangerous trip. Finally, Sea Turtle reached Aunt Nancy's house again. Aunt Nancy was sitting back in her chair, looking very satisfied. Then Sea Turtle saw that half of the food was already gone. Aunt Nancy looked at Sea Turtle closely. "Your hands are still dirty," she said. "I want to share my breakfast with you, but you must wash your hands again." So, Sea Turtle returned to the shore and washed his hands again. On the way back, he tried his best to keep them from getting dirty. Back at Aunt Nancy's house, Sea Turtle found that all of the food was gone. "I was going to save some food for you," Aunt Nancy said, "but then I decided that you would not want to eat cold insects. Maybe next time." Sea Turtle knew that Aunt Nancy had tricked him, but he said nothing. He simply went home very hungry. Oh, wow. So, in part two of our story, we see that Aunt Nancy plays a trick on the sea turtle. She keeps telling him that his hands are too dirty for her to share her breakfast with him. When Sea Turtle goes to wash his hands, he has to go on a very long dangerous walk to the sea, and then his hands get dirty again when he walks back. This is a trick that Aunt Nancy is playing so she can keep all of the delicious food to herself. Let's check out part 3. Oh, now it looks like we're in a different environment. It doesn't look like we're at Aunt Nancy's house anymore. Let's read part 3. A few weeks later, it was another hot day in the salt marsh. The marsh animals looked for any bit of relief from the heat they could find. Dragonflies buzzed above the water. Birds flew low over the marsh, searching for fish. A family of alligators took a loud bath, slapping their tails against the mud. The shallow water of the seashore was Sea Turtle's home. He had spent the morning fishing for minnows and crawfish, just like we can see in the illustration. Aunt Nancy crawled to the shore's edge just as Sea Turtle was sitting down to lunch. She could see him at his table under the cool blue sea. Aunt Nancy poked her head into the water. "Hello, Sea Turtle. May I join you for lunch?" she asked. "Why, of course," Sea Turtle replied. "It would be my honor. Come on down." Aunt Nancy dived into the water, but she floated right back up to the top. She was too light to stay down at the table. "Keep trying," Sea Turtle called. He watched happily as he dipped his spoon into the bowl of seafood. Aunt Nancy kept trying hard to sink, but it was useless. Oh, wow. So now in part 3, Aunt Nancy needs Sea Turtle's help. He found some delicious food and he says he would share it with her, but she cannot sink to the floor of the marsh or to the floor of the seashore and reach the food. So now it kind of reminds me of the trick that Aunt Nancy played on Sea Turtle. She wouldn't share with him, but now he has his food in a spot where he cannot share with her. Let's check out part 4. Aunt Nancy watched Sea Turtle eat his delicious lunch, but she could not reach him. She became very upset. Then the stubborn spider came up with a clever plan. She filled her jacket pockets with small, heavy rocks. The extra weight helped her sink. Aunt Nancy pulled up a chair at Sea Turtle's table, picked up a fork, and reached for a bite of minnows. "Just 1 minute, my friend," said Sea Turtle. Aunt Nancy stopped. "What seems to be the problem, Sea Turtle?" she asked. "Well, at my house, it is not polite to eat with a jacket on. Please take off your jacket," Sea Turtle said. Aunt Nancy knew that she could not be rude in her friend's house. She took off her jacket and floated up to the surface of the water. Her plan had failed. All she could do was crawl home, very hungry. "Sea Turtle tricked me right back," Aunt Nancy thought as she fixed her web. "I guess I deserved it." Later that afternoon, Sea Turtle visited the salt marsh. He apologized to Aunt Nancy, and she apologized too. The two friends promised to share their food from then on. So, just like Aunt Nancy tricked Sea Turtle, he ended up tricking her too. And guess what? When we trick people, it's usually not a very happy thing. The lesson we learned in this story is we should not trick people, especially our friends. Tricking people is not a nice thing to do. Instead, we should share with our friends. That seems like an important lesson. Sharing is important, and we should never, ever trick the people that we care about because that makes them feel bad and sad. Just like we saw with Aunt Nancy and the sea turtle. This folktale teaches us such an important lesson to be kind, to be shared, and to never trick the ones who we care the most about. I hope you enjoyed this folk tale, and I hope you understand the lesson that we learned from listening to it. I hope you can share that lesson with me because I can't wait to hear what you have to say. Thanks for listening, everyone.